Welcome to The World This Week with Alicia Edwards, a look back at some of the biggest global news stories for an international city, brought to you by the London Live News team. Tonight, Russia's long-feared invasion of Ukraine begins, sparking protests and sanctions against Russia from leaders across the globe. Conflict with the police as demonstrators demand higher wages in Haiti. Colombia decriminalises abortion in a move campaigners hailed as a historic victory, and a convoy of truckers demanding an end to coronavirus mandates set off on a cross-country drive from California to Washington ahead of the State of the Union address next week. That's all on the way before 7:30, but first, Russia this week launched its long-feared invasion of Ukraine after Vladimir Putin authorised what he called a special military operation. Putin announced the action during a televised address early on Thursday morning, saying the move was a response to threats from Ukraine.
I decided to conduct a special military operation. Its goal is the protection of people who during 8 years suffer from abuse and genocide from the Kiev regime.
Residents of Ukraine's capital city, Kiev, reacted with fear and disbelief as shells were dropped in a busy residential suburb of the city. Soldiers and police here seen gathering fragments of shrapnel that had exploded from the shell. This, the unwelcome sound Ukrainians awoke to in their capital city. This a block of flats on the outskirts of Ukraine's capital, destroyed by shelling.
Шум, что-то летало или...
There was a noise. Something was flying over us. I came to the window but saw nothing.
Ничего не увидел, отошел сюда, и после взрыва я оказался в такой...
After the explosion, I was in such a lucky position. I could see windows falling down from both of these sides. Luckily, no one suffered.
Отсюда и оттуда.
As the conflict began, Anna said that at 5 a.m. she felt a massive shockwave go through her building, but initially thought it had something to do with the construction site next door. To her shock, she found out a shell had been dropped in her neighborhood.
I just came from home now to see what happened here. Of course, it's terrifying for all of us. We have lost all faith. Until the very last moment, I didn't believe it would happen. I just pushed away these thoughts. I thought it might concern Donetsk and Luhansk, but I didn't ever think it would concern the capital of Ukraine, Kiev. What does he have to do with Ukraine? We are an independent government which takes its own decisions and solves its own internal issues.
Elsewhere, roads have been jammed as people try to flee areas under attack. These pictures from Kiev, where traffic is built up for miles, with queues also having built up for buses, cash points and petrol. The city itself left eerily deserted. Its mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, called on the city's 3 million people to stay indoors unless they worked in critical sectors, and said everyone should prepare go bags with necessities such as medicine and documents. Protests have been taking place around the world against the action. In Russia, the police arrested hundreds of people at anti-war demonstrations across the country, as authorities warned that any negative comments about Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine would be treated as treason. As conflict began, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said Russia has shattered peace on the European continent.
Despite all calls on Russia to change course and tireless efforts to seek a diplomatic solution, peace on our continent has been shattered. We now have war in Europe on a scale and of a type we thought belonged to history. This is a grave moment for the security of Europe. Russia's unjustified and unprovoked attack on Ukraine's on Ukraine is putting countless innocent lives at risk. With air and missile attacks, ground forces and special forces from multiple directions, targeting military infrastructure and major urban centers. This is a deliberate, cold-blooded and long-planned invasion.
President Joe Biden announced a new round of sanctions targeting Russia, saying that Putin chose this war and that his country will bear the consequences of his action.
This is going to impose severe cost on the Russian economy, both immediately and over time. We have purposefully designed these sanctions to maximize the long-term impact on Russia and to minimize the impact on the United States and our allies. I want to be clear, the United States is not doing this alone. For months, we've been building a coalition of partners representing well more than half the global economy. 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and many others, to amplify the joint impact of our response.
Biden there and the US sanctions against Russia. We'll have more on the UK's response to the conflict before 7:30. Some other stories now. We take you to Haiti, where police opened fire on demonstrators demanding higher wages and, according to witnesses, killed a reporter and a hospital official. Earlier, police had fired tear gas as protesters threw rocks at them and used trucks to block a main road near the international airport. It was the first day of a 3-day strike organised by factory workers who shut down an industrial park earlier this month to protest pay, which then was about 500 gurd, which amounts to around £3.65 for 9 hours of work a day. Prime Minister Ariel Henry announced minimum wage hikes on Sunday in an attempt to quell the protests. The factory workers say their salary barely covers food and transportation costs at a time when Haiti is seeing double-digit inflation. To Colombia now, which has become the latest country in South America to decriminalise abortion in a move campaigners hailed as a historic victory for millions of women who have long faced fiercely restrictive abortion policies. Colombia's constitutional court has ruled that women can get abortions until the 24th week of their pregnancy without any permits from lawyers or doctors. Under the new ruling, abortions carried out after the 24th week can still be punished with up to 3 years in prison. With Monday's ruling, Colombia joins several other Latin American countries in facilitating access to abortion in a region where some nations still ban the procedure altogether. The Winter Olympics have come to a close this week. Team GB medalist Eve Muirhead and her gold medal-winning teammates have arrived back in the UK just days after clinching the top prize in the women's curling when they crushed Japan 10-3. She said it was still sinking in.
Oh, it feels fantastic. It's a dream for me to get this Olympic gold medal, and I've worked very, very hard to get here. And my team have been fantastic. They've made me a better player, a better person, and yeah, I just can't thank all our supporters enough. It is my 4th Olympics, and to have lost 2 semi-finals before, to have got 1 bronze medal, I was desperate to get that gold, and I never knew if I was ever going to do that. I've worked very hard to get here, and yeah, here we are. And I just don't think it's really sunk in yet. I think when I get home to Scotland and see friends and family and probably realise the impact that we've had on a nation and on curling in general.
Eve there, congratulations to her and the team. Well, more still to come. The Winter Paralympics get started in Beijing on the 4th of March. Now over to Dubai, where a museum which envisages how the world may look 50 years from today has opened. The Museum of the Future is a 7-storey stainless steel structure which takes visitors to space and features a recreation of the Amazon rainforest. Let's take a look.
Caring for the planet and improving our relationship with the planet is a responsibility, and also that technology can be directed in that way. So if you want to kind of address things like climate change, it doesn't mean that you have to return to like some hunter-gatherer lifestyle. You can actually mobilize and continue progressing and continue innovating, but it should be done with an awareness of our relationship to the planet and that we have a lot of work to do. What we tried to do is create a sort of compelling vision of what would happen if we imagine space as a shared resource, and what would happen if we imagine space exploration and habitation as the sort of shared experience of all people. How could we then use that to, improve life on Earth?
It's always important to continue to evolve and develop and understand what parts of the culture actually push development forward, and creating new norms is okay. And creating new norms and new ways of living and new ways of coexisting is okay.
Some groundbreaking technology at that museum in Dubai. Now, the world this week continues after this short break. More on the conflict in Ukraine as we hear how the UK has responded. Hello there, welcome back. You're watching The World This Week from the London Live News team. A review of the main international stories that have broken over the last 7 days. Still to come before 7:30. Millions of dollars worth of artefacts handed back to Greece from the US after years of investigation into their previous owner. That's on the way, but first we return to the unfolding situation in Ukraine. Number 10 here lit to show solidarity with Ukraine as Boris Johnson set out UK sanctions against Russia, banning the Russian airline Aeroflot from flying to the United Kingdom, imposing a complete asset freeze on all major Russian banks, and legislation will be introduced on Tuesday to prohibit all major Russian firms from raising finance in the UK. These just some of the measures. Boris Johnson gave a televised address saying the UK cannot and will not just look away at Russia's hideous and barbaric attack on Ukraine.
Because our worst fears have now come true and all our warnings have proved tragically accurate. President Putin of Russia has unleashed war in our European continent. He's attacked a friendly country without any provocation and without any credible excuse. Innumerable missiles and bombs have been raining down on an entirely innocent population. A vast invasion is underway by land, by sea, and by air. And this is not, in the infamous phrase, some faraway country of which we know little. We have Ukrainian friends in this country, neighbours, co-workers. Ukraine is a country that for decades has enjoyed freedom and democracy and the right to choose its own destiny. We and the world cannot allow that freedom just to be snuffed out. We cannot and will not just look away. It's because we've been so alarmed in recent months at Russian intimidation that the UK became one of the first countries in Europe to send defensive weaponry to help the Ukrainians. Other allies have now done the same, and we will do what more we can in the days ahead. Today, in concert with our allies, we will agree a massive package of economic sanctions designed in time to hobble the Russian economy. And to that end, we must also collectively cease the dependence on Russian oil and gas that for too long has given Putin his grip on Western politics. Our mission is clear. Diplomatically, politically, economically, and eventually militarily, this hideous and barbaric venture of Vladimir Putin must end in failure. And so I say to the people of Russia, whose president has just authorized a tidal wave of violence against a fellow Slavic people, the parents of Russian soldiers who will lose their lives, I cannot believe this is being done in your name, or that you really want the pariah status it will bring to the Putin regime.
Ukrainians in London have been sharing their fears for friends and families and the future of their country. Anthony has been speaking to an LSE student in London who is from the Ukrainian capital.
The first thing I did immediately was to call my parents, who were asleep, and they did not realize the panic in my voice. I haven't been sleeping for the whole night, so it's my state of like like my makeup is from a previous day. I didn't do everything. What I did is monitor the situation, what's going on right now. So when I called my parents, they didn't realize anything. They were saying, Uliana, can you double check this information, because we don't actually believe this is true. And the next thing, I'm being messaged by my ex-classmates, and she's saying, I hear some kind of explosions. So my friend lives on Chrestiatic Street, so it's a main Kiev street. And I know that they live a couple of kilometers apart, and they're like, so the explosion was so loud, so people heard it from this part of the city and from the center.
To Hong Kong now, where it has become a requirement to be vaccinated in order to enter shopping malls, restaurants and a host of other places on Thursday, as it battles an expanding Omicron outbreak and tries to overcome vaccine hesitancy in parts of its population. Businesses posted a QR code at their entrances for people to scan with a smartphone app to check their vaccine status before entering. Everyone aged 12 and over must have at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine to enter these places. From the 30th of April, those aged 18 and above will be required to have 2 doses. A convoy of truckers demanding an end to coronavirus mandates began a cross-country drive from California to Washington, D.C. ahead of President Joe Biden's State of the Union address. Several hundred people rallied in a parking lot before about 24 trucks and a number of other vehicles hit the road.
My main message is freedom. Of course, that covers pretty much everything. From the mandates to people telling us we got to wear a mask to go inside, and maybe I don't want to wear a mask, and I don't.
Well, it looks like we've all gotten together and we are ready to roll on to DC. We got, I think there's probably about 30 trucks or so, maybe a little more. I think we're big enough to send the message. You get a 53-foot trailer, 15-foot long rig, and you get about 50,000 of those together. It's kind of hard to miss that.
The Pentagon has approved the deployment of 700 unarmed National Guard troops to the nation's capital as it prepares for multiple trucker convoys. According to the Pentagon, the troops would be used to assist with traffic control during demonstrations expected in the city in the coming days. Sticking with the US, prosecutors in New York have said that dozens of looted antiquities seized from collector and billionaire hedge fund founder Michael Steinhardt after a years-long investigation are being returned to the people of Greece. The handover of the ancient objects to Greece comes after the district attorney's office announced a deal in December under which Steinhardt was to surrender $70 million worth of artifacts acquired illegally from Greece and other countries.
Greece has left such a vital cultural imprint on so many aspects of the United States that it brings me such joy to return over 50 of these national treasures back to their rightful place. Despite efforts of many countries to prevent the looting of antiquities representing their history, the theft of these treasures continue to challenge the best efforts of nations from around the world. Trafficking in antiquities is a multi-billion-dollar criminal enterprise, and the meaningful value of these pieces returned home cannot be quantified.
Just to be in the presence of things that date back that far, and I've been around a lot of closures to investigations, to close an investigation and return these antiquities to their rightful place is so affirming, and so just honored to be a part of it, and thank you all for being here.
Farmers in northwest of the Australian state of Queensland are taking to the skies, trading their four-wheel drives for wings. A new flying school in the town of Cloncurry is offering local pilot training, saving time and money for graziers who need to travel huge distances.
I'm driving 60, 70,000 K a year in my car, so it'll cut that in half or more. It's awesome, yeah. It's only a couple of hours from home. Most people have downtime in the wet season, and we can just come here.
There we are, Colin Burnett there, one of those in training for a licence, one way to travel. Now, the peak of the carnival season kicked off in the western German city of Cologne this week. Revellers were dressed up as clowns, bees, pirates and tigers and danced to brass band live music on the city's Alter Market Square in the Old City. Carnival celebrations in the Rhineland traditionally begin on the 11th of November at 11:11 in the morning and last until Ash Wednesday the following year. Revellers said they had waited a long time to celebrate, with the pandemic stopping proceedings since 2019.
That is terrible, of course, but what can you do? We can't stop the world because there are terrible wars raging somewhere in this world. It's not just now in Ukraine, it's everywhere when you look. And we are lucky that we've been spared from it for the last decades. Let's continue to hope that it will stay that way.
Pictures there from carnival season in Germany. And finally this evening we bring you this from the mountains of Southern California. The video stream from the Friends of Big Bear Valley captured a close-up of a pair of eagles switching nesting duties on a snowy morning this week. Named Jackie and Shadow, the pair's chicks are expected to hatch this week in the nest, which is in a pine tree about 145 feet above the ground. Very cute. And that's all from The World This Week with Alicia Edwards. We'll see you at 7 next Saturday as we round up the biggest international news stories for a global city. From all of us here, have a great weekend.